Well, when I scrolled through the images, I found this. Baby was originally gonna be a brunette. You know who
That's good. That's good. That's legit. That's good. Oh, damn. Hey guys, and welcome to GT Not Live, where today is another day, which means it's time for another FNAF theory. And if you don't mind me, this is not sponsored, but we're sponsored on other videos by Factor, and this is my lunch. I don't have time today. We're getting ready to leave for London for 2 weeks, which I've mentioned in previous episodes of GT Live. And that's meaning that we're having to film a lot in a very short amount of time. I was just in LA for a couple weeks. I was just in Mexico on a vacation. So I've been traveling a lot, which means I haven't gotten a lot of opportunities to sit down and record GT Lives, or the stuff that I have gotten chance to sit down and do have been burned through while I've been traveling. And so now with 2 weeks left to go, 2 weeks more that I'm going to be gone, we're having to film a lot in very short amounts of time, which means any waking moment, I am sitting down on the couch and filming something or recording something. So my lunch today is brought to you by Factor, but this episode is not. Other things have been. So this is a hashtag spawn, but not spawn, but could be spawn, and has been spawn, but not this particular episode. So anyway, thanks Factor. So today, what are we doing, Sam?
Today we are doing a classic.
Classic?
We are sitting on the couch reacting to a Five Nights at Freddy's theory.
No way!
Something we've never done before.
I love it. Is it let me think. Is it It's Fantasy? Is it John?
Oh.
John?
John from, I love you, whenever you say his name, you say John from the channel FNAF,
I mean,
which I love.
Well, you kind of have to say John from the channel. Because if I say John, I've narrowed it down to like 30% of the human population, right?
Right.
Like, there's a reason why the generic human archetype is named John Doe.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, like, let's be honest. I'm not narrowing down the field. Like, even if you said, oh, is it Matt? Like, oh, Matt narrows it down a lot, but John is just such a broad spectrum name, right?
It really is.
So John from the channel FNAF?
Correct, yes.
Okay, so we got a FNAF theory on
Correct.
FNAF. Mm-hmm. All right. Is this, okay. I've wanted to watch it. With all the travel, I haven't gotten a chance to do this. Is this the one with baby in the thumbnail?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
Ding, ding, ding.
See, look, I'm paying attention. So to be fair, I have it downloaded on my phone as something to watch while I'm on one of the plane rides, but it ultimately, true fact about my life at this point, most of the scripting that I've been doing lately has been on planes, because that's one of the times that I just have that it's quiet and it's a couple hours and I'm able to lock in and just like write things before we get to the hotel and I'm recording late at night or whatever. But I download a bunch of like, oh, I need to catch up on XYZ, XYZ, XYZ. And this one is one I've been wanting to watch for a while, especially with new Security Breach DLC coming out soon. And with, I mean, in general, I think John has been doing an awesome job with his theories. And so I'm always really excited to see what he's come up with. You could say he's one of my favorite FNAF theorists.
Oh my gosh.
Oh my gosh. But he is, right? And I love the stuff that he does. So I've been really excited to see what he has to say in this video. And during my last flight, the one I literally got off of a couple days ago, I was able to catch up on the books. So I am up to date with Tiger Rock now, which is the latest Tales from the Pizzaplex Fazbear Frights story. Which is interesting, and we're actually working on a theory now. Like, I just talked to Tom about the outline of it this morning. We're both on the same page about how it solves everything, but like how it's really framing where the FNAF franchise is at this point. And I feel really good about it. So I'm curious to see if this plays into it at all or whatever. So we'll see. Yep. But yeah, it's some Tiger Rock stuff and where the whole Mimic and Mimic 1 and Mimic 2 and this and that. So
It's crazy.
I've lost you. I like that you're responding crazy.
Well,
do you know anything about it?
So I think I know more than you think I do.
Okay.
But I don't nearly know as much as somebody who's
I don't want to
job it
oversell
is
you.
to.
Yeah, so if I say like Mimic 1, Mimic 2, do you know what that is?
Yeah, I'm familiar.
Here, I just took a big bite, so please explain
Yeah,
what Mimic
so
is.
from my
Right.
experience, the Mimic 1 and Mimic 2 programs were made by the guy in the books whose kid was really annoying and he wanted to stall him with something.
Yeah.
So he made Mimic 1 as like, here, go play with this robot.
Yeah.
But then it kept mimicking him when he got like mad, and then it went crazy and killed a bunch of people.
Close. So basically, yeah. So as the story goes, there's this genius inventor, Edwin, who has a kid, and he's like, I need time for my work, so he makes the robot to entertain his kid, and the robot is basically an AI who is learning off of mimicking the kid, right?
Okay.
And then they have a really good time together, and the robot gets more and more sophisticated. They grow really close together. Kid dies in a tragic accident, but the AI who has learned from this kid is basically a replica of the kid now, right? And so when Edwin's like, no, my son is dead, and he sees the robot mimicking his kid, he's like, no, get out of here, and he tries to wreck it and beat it up. Which prompted me in a theory that we did not too long ago to say like, oh, he infused it with like agony and anger and remnant or whatever. You know, his agony poured into him, which is why the robot then grows up or like evolves at that point to become violent.
Yeah.
Which isn't necessarily true. Recent stuff and going back and rereading all of that lately, it's not violent. It's executing on programming that it's learned, right? It's a robot that doesn't know better in a lot of cases.
Sure.
And so the initial murders that it does is like it hangs up a coat, or it hangs up a coat, but that coat happens to be a human or whatever. So it's doing violent actions with humans, but it's doing things that it learned from watching the kid in some ways. So there's like this weird robotic confusion, and in the epilogues of a lot of these stories, the AI was programmed to, hey, if you see a humanoid thing, in this case it was supposed to be robots or endoskeletons, rip off its arms and legs and head. And that's what it was supposed to be like an efficient program for this robot to like help do this task of like deconstructing a bunch of endoskeletons.
Okay.
But the programming got misconstrued in the epilogues, where all of a sudden now you have this mimic program going around ripping apart the heads and hands of humans, right? And it's like, oh, humanoid-looking object, rip it apart. It's not doing it maliciously, it's just doing it. It's
ignorant.
executing on the programming, right? It's like, does this look like a human? If so, then rip.
Right.
And so it's being fed bad data, is the way to put it, right? Like
yes.
It was not precisely done, but it's executing on its programming. So is it evil, is it not? Whatever. But that is what all of FNAF is about now, I think. I think all of FNAF, maybe Help Wanted knew this at the time, or maybe it's been retroactively added in, but all of Security Breach, I think, and what the story these games are trying to tell now is all about AI at this point. It's all AI. It's all about AI replicating the data that we put into it. And there's good data, and there's bad data, and there's mixed data. And I think that when you look at some of the characters in FNAF and some of the behaviors of some of these characters, and Mimic 1, Mimic 2, whatever, what you're seeing are different statuses of data being fed into an AI or Mimic program.
Okay.
So that is neither here nor there. We're here to react to this, and I haven't watched this, so I don't know what it's about. But we can talk about AI stuff later. But to me, I feel really strongly that is what the message of the games and the books are now. Is like, this is Scott's way of depicting the good, the bad, and the ugly of what AI learning algorithms are doing, and how they can turn monstrous, how they can be good, and how they're just messy depending on what data gets put in. Anyway, enough about me. Let's talk about John.
Yeah, from
Back
the
in
channel.
September of 2017,
John from
Scott
Channel
Kaufman
FNAF.
made a Reddit post talking about how he likes to use new FNAF games in order to clear up misconceptions from past
100%.
games. But in
So
this
critical.
post, there was
Critical.
one sentence that I never noticed until recently. At the very end of this paragraph, he says, quote, "Currently, there is a misconception from Sister Location that I may need to clear up someday as well. Or maybe I'll just leave it to torment the fandom."
That's interesting. I do remember him saying that. I'd forgotten about it. That's awesome. Great, I'm already hooked. I'm really excited to find out about this. Because now that he brings that up, I'm like, oh yeah, I did make a mental note of that one back in the day when he said that. I'm like, that was weird. Because Sister Location felt very much what you see, what you got. You know, like, it felt very explicit with what it presented. And everyone's like, oh yeah, and there's Baby, and baby gets puked up, and then it becomes Ennard, and Ennard gets puked up and escapes from the sister location or whatever. I'm curious what he's got going on. But that whole idea of like Scott using the next game to clarify the previous game, it is so important to solving the lore. Like that's how we determined that FNAF 4 was 1983, right? That alone was one of the big moments. So, maybe that's the reason why there's never been a FNAF 7, because then it could have clarified what that stupid mound and what Midnight Motorist was in FNAF 6. Maybe we need a FNAF... Maybe Scott didn't know, which is why it didn't get up FNAF 7 and instead ended up like VR and stuff.
Winky face. What? You're telling me that a full year after Sister Location came out, there is still something that everyone thinks is one way, but is actually the other? That one sentence sent me on a hunt for that misconception, and I think I found it. Don't forget to subscribe, and remember, this is just a theory. Like Scott talked about in the Reddit post, he usually uses new games to clear up misconceptions from past games. Like how he used the keypad in Sister Location to settle the Bite of 83 versus 87 debate. And now it looks like he's finally clearing up the Sister Location misconception with Mike's room showing up in Security Breach, and with the clearing up the Sister Location misconception with Mike's room showing up in Security Breach.
Clearing up the Sister Location, okay. So he's saying that thing I'm going to clarify at some point is the reason why Mike's room is here. Okay.
And with the Sister Location bunker showing up in the Help Wanted 2 trailer.
Yeah, okay, Help Wanted 2 has the Sister Location bunker, yes.
Something tells me we missed something big with that game. And I believe that thing has to do with Mike's room we go back to after every shift in Sister Location.
Okay.
Specifically, the show that plays on the TV. The Immortal and The Restless is very prominently featured in the game, but no one seems to have come up with a clean answer for what it was trying to tell us. The show centers around a vampire and his wife. The husband repeatedly says that the vampire baby is not his.
Clara, I tell you, the baby isn't mine.
I've gone on the record to say this multiple times, where I'm like, the whole idea of kids, and I've mentioned this a couple times in my live reactions, and I've never been able to, and I've mentioned it briefly, I think in one or two of the game theories that I've put out there. I've cut it from multiple scripts, because I never know what to say about it. The idea of the baby isn't mine, and and even in the books, there's this repeated idea of like, Afton stealing a kid. Like, the original trilogy of novels is Afton steals away one of the kids. And in this, you have the baby isn't mine. Like, there's this repeated theme of someone here has been kidnapped or adopted or taken away from some other family. And it's a repeated thing that always happens. And there's a couple questions that I would ask Scott if I was ever presented with an opportunity to ask him actual direct questions about things. And I can tell that he's trying to say something about that in the games. And I don't know what it is, because it doesn't fit clean. Is it Mike? Is like Mike kidnapped? Is it Elizabeth? Was Elizabeth not his? Was it originally Charlie? Because in the books, it's Charlie. Like, Charlie was, has these hallucinations of, my brother was kidnapped, and the big reveal is like, no, it was you the whole time. And it's like, what? That doesn't even make sense. And so I'm very curious to see where he's going with this, because I've had the suspicion for a while that someone is not an Afton, or someone is not a Emily or whatever. So
every single episode, he makes it clear that although the baby is also a vampire, it is not his baby.
Which would make you think that it's Mike, right? Like, you would think that, because in FNAF 6, right, which would be the game after Sister Location, there's a poster that shows a family photo, right? And you have the ventriloquist. Here, I can even show it, because look, we live in a digital age, and I can pull up things. FNAF 6 Easter egg poster. That should get me what I'm looking for, maybe. This thing, yeah. Right here. So this one, right? You have Afton, the father, in purple. You have the son, crying child, 1980, bitten by Freddy. You have Baby, the clown, in clown form. And you have Mike, the puppet, which they're saying puppet here. That's not, I would disagree with that. I think this is because the one thing you learn in Sister Location is everyone always says, oh, you look like him. Or, oh, they confused me as you, right? Which indicates that Mike, going down into the chutes, and William look alike, so much so that they are confused for each other. So that's why you have them looking the same. They're both in purple. And and Afton is the puppeteer of Mike.
Has anyone ever pitched him being a William robot?
That Mike is a William robot?
Right. If they're so specifically like, you look exactly the same. I mean, this is like less you look the same, and this is more like you are the same.
Oh, man. If you thought people were mad about me saying Gregory's a robot, oh. Here's the thing. The idea of, no one has, or at least not that I'm aware of, right? And I do think that if I were to ever say, like, by the way, Mike is a robot, I would be crucified.
Tarred and feathered.
Yeah, right. Literally run out of town on a rail. I'm open to any theory. Sure. Like, I am not the type to really judge. Like, I'll say, like, oh, this feels more supported or less supported or whatever. But I'm like, I'm open to anything. I don't immediately dismiss something because I'm like, oh, I hate that. I will recognize I don't like the theory, but I'm going to try to stay open-minded to it.
Yeah.
The idea that anyone in this franchise could be a robot or like a person disguised as a robot, or a robot disguised as a person is new, right? Like, I think we were really the first people to say, like, hey, I think Gregory being a robot, that theory, was really the first time the door had truly been opened at a large scale of saying, like, hey, can some of these characters actually be robots?
Yep.
And now, years later, when you go back to Sister Location, you see, and in the character encyclopedia and whatever, and all the evidence that we've talked about in some of the subsequent theories after that, the idea that William Afton was already working on robot humans and realistic robot humans is laid out in Sister Location. Like, that is so clear to me at this point, and I think we all overlooked it because humanoids have always been very, up to that point at least, had always been very vague. You know, you had Balloon Boy, and it's like, what is Balloon Boy? Like, I don't know what he is, but he's a humanoid robot, realistic looking.
Yep.
And so when you see moving and blinking robot heads, humanoid robot heads in the Sister Location opening foyer, right? Here, we'll do it. Google Images. Oh, great, I've just completely screwed the pooch on this one. Great, that was stupid of me, Matt. I just choked under pressure. You think I've done this enough times?
The old Google.
Right, that's right. What an amateur mistake. What a cringe. Sister Location lobby, I guess I would say. Like this thing right here, yeah. So you have these guys, right? These heads that move. And I think at the time, all of us kind of dismissed it as just set dressing because it's like, oh, like there's been Balloon Boys. It's just another like robot doll or whatever. Not realizing that, oh no, this is probably actually just William starting to stage a pathway to robot humans, right? I am almost 100% positive that Easter egg now, or that set dressing, was so much more than was meant to. And the character encyclopedia kind of equates to that. So to your question, no one had pitched out that Mike could be a robot, but could he be? Yeah, maybe.
Yeah, that's the thing with once there's one robot human, now anybody can be a robot.
Right, you kind of open
Which
up
is
the
tough.
door, right? It becomes really tough.
Yep.
But anyway, to summarize, I think everything, right, is if I were to ask Scott, like, very clearly, someone isn't who they say they are, or someone isn't part of the family, right? And again, if you were to ask me with that, the baby isn't mine, it's a baby vampire.
Right.
And so you would think it's Mike, right? Like, oh, the baby isn't mine. It isn't Mike. Mike is not my son.
Right.
But then, so like, but why? Like, so what? You know, like here, if Mike is a mini Afton, if Mike is mini William, and in the Immortal and The Restless, you have baby vampire is not mine. Baby vampire is not mine. So Mike isn't part of the family, I guess, but it's just.
Like,
so,
what? Cool. What is that?
Yeah, right? Like, I don't understand what the point of that would be. And it muddies the waters, I guess. I don't know. But I've suspected for a while that there's some weird family thing that we don't know about when it comes to Mike. So, I'm curious. Maybe that's where he's going.
They all assumed that the husband and wife is Mr. and Mrs. Afton,
I mean,
but who the baby is seems to still be a mystery to this day. Although Michael Afton is William's son and they both turn into undead purple
And they're
people,
both purple,
nowhere
like,
in
there's
the
so many
games does it
parallels.
ever hint that Michael isn't actually William's kid. Twitter user The Logical YT recently pointed out to me that the house we see in the Immortal and The Restless is a Queen Anne style house. The
Sure.
same style house that Edwin bought for his wife in the story The Mimic in the newest Tales from the Pizzaplex book.
That's interesting. It's interesting that they call that out. It's a Queen Anne style house. That's a cool detail. It's a really cool detail. I will say what? Queen Anne style house though, it's very iconic, like it's a castle, right? And so the immediate thing that I come back with is the FNAF 4 house, which we know, FNAF 4 house, where we see like a silhouette of the house. It is not a Queen Anne house. So in the opening title screen of FNAF 4, you see a silhouette of a house. That is presumably the FNAF 4 house where all of this is taking place. It is not Queen Anne, which is one of the things that's always driven me nuts about the house silhouette. Because I've always thought the same thing. I'm like, oh, the house silhouette, we can connect it somewhere else at some point. But it's never been matched, which has been difficult for me.
Very odd connection between the show and the Mimic. In my last theory, I explained that I think the Mimic is a parallel to Henry's story, and the
Yes.
physical Mimic that Edwin builds is a parallel to Baby. In my I Saw
And the physical mimic is a parallel to Baby.
Security Breach series back in November, I explained that I think Henry rebuilt Charlie, then Afton stole the bot and made it his own. So
Henry, this is the thing he always comes back to, is that Henry rebuilt Charlie, and then William stole it. And that's coming off of the books. So in the books, Charlie is kidnapped by William. And so that's what he's saying, is okay.
to rephrase, my theory was that the baby isn't his. Wait.
The baby isn't mine.
If
That's a
this
good
sounds
reveal.
familiar,
That's good. I like
I've
that.
actually made this connection before.
That's funny.
8 months ago, I said that I think the Immortal and the Restless is about how the Charlie bot isn't William's, it's Henry's. An idea that Scott introduced in the Silver Eyes trilogy that started releasing before Sister Location even came out.
Ah.
But even back then,
That's interesting. But that was the first one.
trilogy that started releasing before Sister Location even came out.
If it was, so he's saying December 2015. Here, Silver Eyes. Silver Eyes release date 2015. Yeah, so that's the first book. First book doesn't establish that. It is so I would nitpick that a little bit, where it is the second book, Twisted Ones. When was Twisted Ones come out? Release date, reading level. Yeah, 2017. So I will say this is really compelling if it had been Twisted Ones, because the reveal that Charlie was kidnapped and she's like, oh, this whole time I've been imagining that, I have these hallucinations of my brother Sammy getting kidnapped. And then the big reveal at the end of this Twisted Ones is, aha, no, you're the one that was kidnapped the whole time. And you as a reader are like, what? How does that make sense? I'm so confused. Because she didn't grow up with you, so what? Lol, what? And so that idea is confusing. If Twisted Ones had been up before that, and then you see this, yes. But I could see this world where Sister Location comes out first. That muddies the water slightly. I think it's a really interesting observation, though. That's really cool. Slightly weakened by the fact that the point where that reveal happens is still after the game where all these things are being talked about.
But even back then, I never really made the connection that the baby isn't mine could literally mean baby isn't his. The only thing that doesn't fit cleanly is the fact that the baby is referred to as his son, not his daughter.
That's
Although
true.
you could argue that Charlie's death minigame in FNAF 2 was called Save Him, and the puppet is constantly referred to as a he, so pronouns have always been flipped around for Charlie. I think the show
It is, yeah. I appreciate that he's calling out some of the weaker points to it, because I would agree, right? Exactly what I was saying earlier. Like, to me, when you see a baby vampire and you have a daddy vampire, and then the next game, again, if clarify things in the next game, you have another poster in that next game where you have a dummy that looks exactly like the ventriloquist. you're drawing repeated parallels between Mike and William. That would make me think that the Immortal and West. Whereas here you're saying, oh, but it's a he, it's a she. You know, it weakens it a little bit. I like where he's going with this, though. I think I'm intrigued.
It was meant to be about the general idea that Baby did not originally belong to William. To see if I could find supporting evidence for this theory, I decided to look back at sister location.
So would he be saying that the Baby robot, or are you saying that Elizabeth? Because I think that's a critical distinction. Because you're also saying Charlie. So that I guess that would be my confusion with this theory in this moment, and maybe you understand it better. But when he says, hey, William came in and stole away a Charlie bot, but now we're saying, oh, Baby is the one who stole. So is he thinking that William came in and the baby isn't his, the robot Baby, Elizabeth, the girl inside of Baby, or is he saying Charlie, or Charlie bot who became Elizabeth who became Baby? I think that's where I'm confused right now. Because I think, here's the thing, right? If you're telling me that we're following a closer parallel to the books, where in the books, I'm so sorry, the Fourth Closet just was the weirdest WTF reading experience of my life. In the books where it's revealed, and I had to read this multiple times to be like, am I really reading this correctly? Like, you're expecting me to think this? So, multiple iterations of Charlie growing up, all of them robots, all built by Henry. William kidnapped, did he kidnap a Charlie bot, or did he kidnap Charlie as a kid and then she died? And then he was so grief-stricken, he rebuilt Charlie as a robot across all those ages. I think that's what it was. So he still kidnapped a kid. So are we saying that, because here's what I would say, like this is this is just me live theorizing, right? So apologize for the messiness. And this is just like completely non-evidentiary. But if you were to tell me William kidnapped baby Charlie and then raised her as Elizabeth, I'd be like, oh, I could see that. Like, based on the books, I could see that. Because you have him kidnap a daughter because he wanted a daughter for himself or was jealous of Henry or whatever. He kidnaps, why ever people do things. He kidnaps the kid of his rival and raises her as his own. And then later she dies in a tragic accident. I could see that. And then that girl that is Charlie becomes Elizabeth as we know her, who then becomes Baby. Which is so, I see you doing the like heavy like, the like heavy blink, like, yeah. Which, and again, this is one of the reasons why I haven't done a theory about this, and I haven't like dived into this, is because it adds so many layers of complication to an already very strange, complicated story that I'm like, it's not even worth it to address. Like, if that is canon, if that is correct, sometimes maybe ignorance is, sometimes it's not enough. Sometimes being right isn't enough. Maybe that's what it is.
Yeah,
right?
I mean, for me, these two had Henry and William had a relationship. Like, if his daughter went missing,
right?
Wouldn't he see like a Christmas card like, oh, that's my daughter. Like, can you give her back?
Right. Well, that's the other side of this, right? That I've always had a problem with the whole like William kidnapping Charlie or whatever, right? Unless I'm misunderstanding things, you would assume that the two of them are working relatively close to one another. They co-founded this company.
Yeah.
Right? They are co-founders of this business. And so for William to come in and yeet away a daughter 3 blocks down, like 3 blocks, and Henry's like, man, I am so grief-stricken about my lost daughter. Wait a minute, where did that girl come from? It's like, oh, sorry. Like, in the way that I envision this world working, it doesn't really make a whole lot of sense. But maybe there's a world where they're like so far removed. But again, like, why? It's hard. All right, let's keep going.
While looking through the extras menu, I was reminded that Scott added the making of some of the animatronics. Looking through Foxy and Freddy, it seems that Scott was showing off what he had in mind initially for the designs and colors of the characters. Yeah. Foxy had more of a light pink coloring, and Freddy did too, along with not having Bonbon or a speaker on his chest. Yeah. And I knew these weren't just placeholder colors because he fully rendered and posed them with lighting and everything before showing their final versions. This is how he imagined these characters looking initially before changing them for the final game. But I only showed you Foxy and Freddy. What did Scott initially have in mind?
Good build-up. His scripting's gotten better. I've noticed across all these reactions, he's figuring out the twist reveal and like the build. Smart man. I'm proud. I'm like a proud papa. I'm like, yeah, he's getting it. I see his craft getting better. It's awesome. It's great. This is exactly how you have to script this stuff, because it's like here, and now here it is, and you're like, whoa, no way.
Yep.
For Baby. Well, when I scrolled through the images, I found
cursed.
this. Baby was originally gonna be a brunette.
Ha!
You know who else?
That's good. That's good. That's legit. That's good. Oh, damn. that's solid. I like that.
Scrolled through the images.
I hate it, but I
found
like it.
This. Baby was originally gonna be a brunette.
Is that true, or is that just a weird lighting thing? Because the lighting does look weird here. It looks more muted. I mean, it's definitely not the bright clown red. That's funny. That's really interesting. All right, keep going.
You know who else is
Got
a
me
brunette?
hooked.
Charlie. Something
Yeah,
that's
no, I mean, yeah, I'm glad they showed this parallel, because that's immediately flashed.
Yeah, I mean, those two photos are.
I mean, that's it.
Yep.
That's good. The baby isn't mine.
That's
Huh.
also, I like that a lot.
This is solid.
The word baby
Yeah.
being the
Being the actual,
tie. Yeah, I like that.
as opposed to the
child. Yeah.
right? Because when he first said, "Oh, the baby," I'm like, yeah, but the visuals, like, it doesn't make the words being the parallel. God, he probably did it that way too, in case he wanted to change it.
Right, it's open-ended.
If I'm Scott, I'm writing this in a way that's like gonna pivot it one way. It probably was originally meant to be Mike, and then he's like, "Oh, I might as well make it be." Like, I don't know, something changed in his mind. He's like, "I'm gonna go this way instead."
Right. That's also
But he
the
left
thing.
it open so you could go. God.
That's the thing with these theories. It's like, how much retrofitting am I doing
know.
into the story that was like originally written, and how much is like, well, people think this is kind of cool, so maybe
Right,
I'll make it say that.
It's this cat and mouse chase that is so fascinating. It's like you're chasing a serial killer, except it's a serial storyteller.
Yeah, retconner.
Yeah, serial retconner. You're like, I'm gonna catch him one of these days, and he's like, well, you can't, because I've written my story to be like 3 different options, and then eventually I'm gonna go this route, and you're gonna figure it out 3 years later, and it's be like, it was there the whole time, ignoring all the evidence pointing in the exact opposite direction. Because honestly, that's what it is, right? Here, and that's one of the reasons why I think when you're approaching this franchise and listening to anyone's theories, you have to stay as open-minded as possible, and you have to be willing to acknowledge the weaknesses and roll with them. Because this is really compelling. This shot on screen right now, that is really compelling. I see that and I'm like, oh, that is a great slam dunk moment. That reminds me of our grand finale of Dream Theory, where I pull out the alarm clock versus the clock chimes. And I'm like, that's the killer moment. This is a killer moment. But in doing this, you have to ignore everything that we just talked about with the parallels with Mike, right? Like the fact that he is set up to be a parallel, the fact that it's you know, that you have a visual parallel between these two characters. Like, I get it, but there is just as many moments that kind of lead you down both paths, and that's the trick with this franchise, right? There's so many. Gregory's a robot versus not. It's a bifurcated path that I think, I don't know, maybe this is me being too conspiratorial, but that has been crafted that way to leave options open so the community decides, and then 2 years later, in 2 games late, 2 years later and 2 games later, they've actually decided what route they want to take. And they're like, okay, well, the clues were laid out for you the entire time. And it's like, well, yeah, but do you understand why we're confused along the way?
Yep.
Which is, I think, one of the endlessly frustrating but also compelling things about this franchise, right? Is that they're smart enough to do it that way, to keep us guessing, and to leave enough there to keep us guessing until it's like, oh yeah, it was all about AI this whole time. You know, Security Breach obviously was about AI.
Duh.
You
missed it.
How did you not know? Oh, it just took you like 4 additional books, 2 additional games, and whatever. And it's like, oh yeah, it was so clearly laid out this entire time.
Already established at the time in the Silver Eyes novel. Scott did not need to include this in the extras menu, but I think he did to try and nudge us in the right direction. Fast forward to today, and we have the story about the Mimic. That's almost scarily accurate.
Now we're getting into the Mimic. So, put on your your fire shields, because flame shields activated, because I know the mimic is so controversial.
Theory that I had back in November in my I Solved Security Breach series. Like I said before, my theory was that Henry rebuilt Charlie, Afton stole it, and now it's an evil version of Charlie. But the way I connected this Charlie bot to Security Breach was through Mike's room. I said that the entrance of the room looks like one of the closet doors from the Silver Eyes trilogy.
Sure.
The Charlie bots were represented by the closet doors in those books. I also said that the wall code could connect to the Charlie bot as well, and I still believe that to be the case. To me, the wall code sounds like someone is being sent on a mission by someone who has built the breath.
Yes.
Since it reads, break and mend, I built the breath, and your life, your aim will save those with soul. They are telling someone to go do something, and I believe this could be William's message to Michael before sister location.
I disagree. It has to be to Gregory. It has to be. I feel really confident about that at this point, where, 5 theories later or whatever, like, you finally figure it out. But, like, going back and rereading that for the umpteenth time, it finally clicked in my head. He's right. The I built the breath or whatever, I built it, right? It has to be William or it has to be Henry. And I feel like it has to be Henry, just because why would William want to build something to save those with soul? That is not a, like, because if you read that whole poem on the wall, it is all of it. The whole thing is talking to Gregory. Run and jump and flash but there's a whole section of verbs, right? And we talked about this in previous series, but there's a whole section of verbs in there, and all of them are things that Gregory and only Gregory do. Only across the entire franchise, right? So it has to be from someone wanting to save kids, save entities, or save entities with souls, robots, whatever, freeing the souls, which was Henry's last gasp, like, finally we'll be able to set you free or whatever, to Gregory. And it has to be Henry to Gregory. Like, I feel like that has to be. It doesn't make sense if it's William, and there are no other builders in the franchise unless it's someone completely new. So I feel like it has to be Henry to Gregory in that. Now, everything else around there, I think, remains to be seen, but I feel really, really strongly about that. And who knows, maybe Gregory is, like, rebuilt or reborn, who knows, right? But I think that much is hard to deny. And then when you look at the Tales from the Pizzaplex books that establish Edwin a Henry parallel, it's a controversial take in the FNAF community, but I think you have to say that the two of them are, at the minimum, they are very narratively parallel to each other. Henry and Edwin, this father who loses his child and is a genius inventor who builds this brilliant AI and whatever, and who builds Chica and who does, again, all the things that we see Henry do in the games. For Edwin to talk to robots, this robot entity, in a geometric language, it's described in the tale. He speaks in this geometric language full of shapes and triangles, which is what you see up there. Like, it is so hard to deny that. I feel like it just has to be. And so the books are really solving Security Breach for us, which again is just more evidence of Henry writing in the secret language to Gregory, this AI robot program thing that he or someone else built, but who is now tasked with doing the game's events of Security Breach.
This would be the message that Michael references in his speech to his dad.
I found it. It was right where you said it would be. They were all there. I put her back together, just like you asked me to.
When you look at the wall code with that perspective, it kind of makes sense. William successfully built the breath. He figured out how to use remnants, but the things he brought to life in his experiments are now drawn to it. They need Michael's body so they can escape.
If we looked like you, then we would have somewhere to go.
Crawl, run, flash, shoot, crush the vile band sounds like exactly what we do in Security Breach,
right.
But if you think about it, it could also connect to what we do in Sister Location. Crawl, run, flash, shoot, crush the vile
That's
band.
not, okay, shoot, you lost me on shoot. You had me on flash, and I was like, oh, he got me on flash, and then I'm like, wait a minute, but there's a couple other verbs here. Shoot, you lost me.
Crawl, run.
Crawl, I would say this is crawl. Crawl and run, you flip the two, but that's fine.
Flash.
Flash is solid. I'm like, flash, where are you flashing? Flashing, that's solid.
Shoot.
That is not shooting, that is shocking. That is issuing a controlled shock. You're not shooting, so you're not shooting electricity through that. Like, I feel like that is a bit of a like that's too stretchy to me.
Crush the vile band.
And crushing is also crushing, right? Is two more things, right? So in Security Breach, Gregory crushes Chica. Like we see him actively crush her in the like pizza section, right? And that's why they get sent down into the garbage chute. That is a very literal crush. You also see the slow motion crush of Roxy's face. Like Gregory and crushing are very synonymous. Whereas to say Michael in Sister Location is crushing, he's not. He rebuilds. I put her back together. He actually rebuilds Baby. And the thing that's doing any sort of crush, there's no crushing. It's the scooping and that's dismantling. No one's actually being crushed. It's also worth noting, they're not a band. And I think that's the other key difference here, and this is what my counterpoint to John here, is the characters in Sister Location aren't really a band, right? You have Ballora on her own stage. You have Foxy in his own stage. You have Freddy in his own stage. Everyone is very separate, right? Whereas in Security Breach, it starts off and all of them are performing. That is the first thing you see. Like, welcome to Freddy Fazbear's Pizzaplex. And they're all performing on stage as a band. And bit by bit, you crush the vile band. You crush them all. So literally, in a very literal way. So I like a lot of what you're saying. And you almost had me on the floor. Like, that was solid. But I think that there is a more literal and a more one-to-one interpretation there that is more supported by the games, which is that all of that's happening in Security Breach.
That's William warning Michael about the fun times, but he tells him to stay focused because his life and his aim will save those with soul. Michael is going to save his sister.
It's also against the character of William. Like William does not want to save things with soul, right? Henry does. That is the whole ending of FNAF 6. So for William to be like, save him with soul, it's like, he doesn't care. He's the one who put him there in the first place. He's like, hey, can you go recycle that soul juice that I...
Control Z.
Yeah, I have regrets. Undo. Sorry. No, it just doesn't make sense to me.
Resides in Baby. In my previous theory video, I talked about in the story The Storyteller, it's revealed that a giant white tiger head is controlling the whole Pizzaplex and is responsible for the animatronics acting strange. And that the tiger head is running the same program that Edwin created called Mimic 1.
Correct.
Back in November, I pointed out all of the symbolism relating to Nightmare Own throughout the Pizzaplex. The hidden plushies, the staff bots, but most notably, the wires in the arcade that look just like the puppet's arms.
100%. That was great theory. Forever changed the way I looked at this game. Like, again, this is why I think watching these things, reacting to these things, theorists watching each other stuff is so valuable, because that forever changed the way I looked at Security Breach and has led me to this AI stuff to where we are now. But like, again, when I was first playing the game, I'm like, those wires are suspicious. That's weird. And then it's such a big game, you don't think about it. And you're like, well, why would I assume the puppet's here? Because the puppet should be long gone. And then you have this John theory that just changed everything for me. It's like, oh, that's great. 100% right. Just with some small tweaks to make it more right.
And now I've actually made a new discovery. In the part of the game where we're running from Vanny, we pass by this giant server room. I never really thought anything of it until now. In this server room, there are once again giant wires with the same black and white stripes like we see in
100%.
the arcade. And they are everywhere and connected to everything. Not to mention, this room is full of Nightmare Own staff bots. Security Breach is about environmental storytelling, and Steelwool Studios was very clearly trying to tell us something.
Which I think, and I think that's a great observation on his part. I think that's one of the reasons why we all had a hard time with it. Because so much of this franchise up to this point, because of the style of games they were, which is literally like, you're looking at single screens, right? Everyone was trained up to that point to look at like specific moments or scenes or like individual characters or like everything was so static in the first handful of games, right? Security Breach is the first time that you're immersed in a full-on world. And so the clues can be hidden everywhere. I mean, random wires in a random part of a huge game. And I don't think us as the audience at the time had fully shifted over our thinking to like what this new game required of us to solve, right? Because the clues can be hidden anywhere, right? And they are, actually. The more that you look at it, the more it is, like, there is a lot of storytelling. But there's also a lot of empty space, too. And I think between all how messy that game was and this and that, a lot of us were like, well, if they couldn't get the basic story right, and if they couldn't get the basic gameplay right, clearly they're not thinking about it to the level of detail of, like, the wires have meaning. And I think now what we've seen is that there's been a bit of a correction of that. Like, no, they actually did think about a lot of this stuff. Probably should have focused a little bit more on the gameplay. Like, I don't know. It did well for him, so whatever. But I think at the time, yeah, we weren't really looking at it that way. We weren't really trained to think that way. And also the game wasn't really guiding us in that. Like, it wasn't giving us the faith that that level of detail had been put in. So everyone's like, oh, well, whatever.
I started writing this video before the new game theory came out, but it looks like Matpat agrees that a Charlie virus is in play here.
I
Where
agree.
did this Charlie virus come from? Well, if Baby really is an evil rebuilt version of Charlie, then it must have come from her. But how could this virus come from Baby if she was burned in FNAF 6? If I'm claiming that...
Like, let's be honest, burning in FNAF 6, the most empty symbolic action known to mankind. It was awesome. It was cool. Also completely meaningless, pretty much.
Baby/evil Charlie bot really is back, wouldn't FNAF 6 debunk that? Well, hold on to your seats for this one. On the 5th night in Sister Location, we hear a speech from Baby.
Can you hear me? I'm going to be taken to the scooping room soon.
She seems scared because she knows she's about to be sent to the scooper. The Charlie virus knows what's about to happen and she wants to make sure that a piece of her survives. So she does what she does best. She pretends.
I'm pretending. Remember how I said I could pretend? There is something bad inside of me. I want you to save what is good, so the rest can be destroyed and never recovered. There is a passcode that you must enter before you can retrieve me.
After putting in the passcode, this happens.
A hatch should have opened. Take the card that you find inside. Now you must turn back.
Michael does what she says. He takes the chip containing the Charlie virus out of Baby. Remember, Baby might be a Charlie bot running a Charlie virus, but Elizabeth died inside of her.
Yeah, that's another one moment that's always bothered me. Sister Location bothered me a lot. Like, there was a lot of bits in there that I'm like, that's weird. Like, that was also the one where earlier in the game, you also have Freddy having the like little flashing disc, and that's where I'm like, the sound illusion discs are things. Look, there is a disc, and it's flashing, and it might relate to sound or whatever. Like, I remember back in the day, I'm like, that's a disc. And in the books, there's discs that make sound, that trick you into seeing things, and Freddy is one of the things that uses those discs, and there they are. And people were really mad about it because no one wanted the sound illusion discs, which I don't blame anyone for. Like, they sucked. And they still do suck, but I think, again, like, early signs of that. I've always thought that Baby moment is very strange. That she's like, you have to remove what is bad so that what is good remains. What is it?
You find
Take the card that you find there.
This happens.
Yeah.
a hatch should have opened. Take the card that you find inside. Now you must turn.
And it was always weird to me that it wasn't actually embedded or ingrained in the animatronic itself. Like, it's just like, oh, here's a random card just popped up there. Whatever.
back.
Michael does what she says.
Sure.
He takes the chip containing the Charlie virus out of Baby.
I don't know if it's necessarily a Charlie virus, but I could see it being like the essence of Elizabeth/Baby. I could totally see it being the essence of her. Virus. Again, that's dependent on how you're reading things, but like the program, the Elizabeth program, the Charlie program, maybe potentially. Yes, I could say that. To go virus, I think is maybe giving it a bit too much.
Remember, Baby might be a Charlie bot running a Charlie virus, but Elizabeth died inside of her. They are both occupying Baby. Now
That is something, and again, this fourth closet, biggest WTF. That is something that is established in the book, that Elizabeth and Charlie are both in the same weirdo body. And they're a mix of both things, which is just strange and confusing and breaks all narrative storytelling convention because it's messy to the umpteenth power, but it is a thing.
Elizabeth is all that remains in Baby, Charlie is more than happy to have the body destroyed.
I want you to destroy this body.
This is the one thing that Henry did not account for when he did the FNAF 6 fire. He didn't know that Michael took the Mimic/Charlie virus out of Baby. Henry thought he burned everything in that.
Be careful, and this is more for John. who probably isn't watching. He's got better things to do this time than watch me, I guess. But maybe he is. But I think this is the recommendation I would have. You conflated a lot of things there. You said, oh, he took the baby slash, how did he say it?
Michael took the mimic slash Charlie virus
The
out.
mimic slash Charlie virus. You're conflating a lot of things there that it may or may not be, right? Is it the mimic program? Is it like you're saying it's a mimic, it's a baby, it's a virus, it's all of those things? That's confusing, and being a little bit more specific about what you're saying and building up to that logic there, I think is important.
Out of baby.
So if you're taking a bunch of programming or a mimic of Charlie, I think that's fine. I think that's fine. This is interesting.
Henry thought he burned everything in that fire, but that evil Charlie virus lived on in that chip. Baby literally tells us by grabbing that chip, we are retrieving her.
There is a passcode that you must enter before you can retrieve me.
The baby that was talking to us throughout Sister Location was always the evil Charlie virus in that chip. In Sister Location,
But then she talks to us again. Doesn't she? Baby continues to talk to us through the end of that game. So if I take the chip and I'm destroying the body, why would she still talk to me during the custom night? Like, she's in Ennard, and doesn't she talk to me through Ennard? That's tricky. So if I have the thing that's actually hi, I'm the little talking chip. Hi, I'm actually your sister who's a copy of a dead child who's been mimicked this entire time. Okay, sure, why not? But then why would she still be able to use Elizabeth's voice during like the Ennard fight or whatever, right? Because the Ennard fight, you hear her whispering, being like, "You came back for me. Give yourself up to me, whatever." She says all this stuff during the Ennard fight. Oh, no.
and Baby
It's an
never
interesting
talks to us as if she is Elizabeth.
Isn't this why you came here? To be with her again? I still hear her sometimes.
She talks about her as if she's a separate person. But in FNAF 6, the Charlie virus is out of Baby, and now she's talking as if she is Elizabeth.
I will make you proud, Daddy.
That chip was ground zero for that Charlie virus that ended up running the entire pizza place.
So she refers to herself in the third person.
And now she's talking as if she is Elizabeth.
Still hear her sometimes. Isn't this why you came here? To be with her again?
Yeah.
I
So Ennard's talking about the spirit of Baby, right? Yeah.
still hear her sometimes.
Right, the little girl.
She talks about her as if she's a separate person. But
Yeah.
in FNAF 6, the Charlie virus is out of Baby, and now she's talking as if she is
one and the same.
Elizabeth.
I will make you proud, Daddy.
That chip was
That's so damn
ground.
confused. Like, this game, this franchise, man. It's so damn confusing. Like, oh, the self-aware robot is gonna talk about the spirit trapped inside of it in the third person, but then eventually assume its own identity. Oh, obviously.
Duh.
How did you not solve this? The FNAF theorists. Scott being like, I'm gonna dunk on all you. Like, how did you not solve it so obvious the entire time?
Ground zero for that Charlie virus that ended up running the entire Pizzaplex. But if Michael really got scooped at the end of Sister Location, how did that virus end up in the hands of Fazbear Entertainment? Well, in the story The Mimic, Edwin leaves the Mimic behind,
Correct.
something Baby alludes to.
What is bad is always left behind.
Months later, Fazbear Entertainment sent workers to go collect the Mimic from Edwin's abandoned warehouse.
I
Just
love
like the
that.
two workers
That is top tier animation right there.
It's so good.
It's so good. I love it. That's amazing.
who were sent
The only thing that would make it better if the bottom had dramatic recreation flashing or something, like some disclaimer of like dramatic recreation of this event.
to the Sister Location bunker on night 4.
Uh-oh, it sounds like someone else is in the building.
One of the first workers who got killed by the Mimic was literally put on a clothes hanger and hung in a closet,
Correct.
which is very similar to what happened to the workers in the bunker. One of the first
Slightly different. To be fair,
Did they get
clothes hanger.
Did they get hung up in a closet?
I mean, they did in the book, but like those guys,
Yeah.
yeah. No, that is not being hung up in a closet. Let's say that. Slightly different. I get what you're saying, though.
costumes the Mimic puts on before going on a killing spree was also a jester costume, which is what Baby was designed to look like. But in the story The Mimic, even though the workers were killed, it seems that Fazbear Entertainment was still able to acquire the Mimic, since we learn in the epilogues that they made a Mimic version 2 based on the first Mimic.
Yeah.
So if Fazbear Entertainment also got that chip in the games, what happened to it? Well,
I mean, unclear. Like, here's the thing. I don't think you necessarily need to explain. Like, Fazbear Entertainment has access to all this. Like, you're right. It'd be cool if you smoothed through that little point in the timeline or whatever. I don't think you necessarily need to, though, because, like, at this point, Fazbear has access to everything, like, and anything. You know, to say, like, I mean, saying this level of detail is also like saying, hey, and after the pizzeria burns down in FNAF 3, they scan, and FNAF 6, right? In VR, they say, oh, we're scanning circuit boards into the system to create the VR game or whatever. And it's like, well, where'd those circuit boards come from? Everything burned. So, you know, and it's like, oh, well, some of them, there's some elements of, you can just, like, I trust you. Like, I get it. How'd Fazbear get it? They do.
Well, to figure that out, we'll have to look at Help Wanted. In the tapes we collect in Help Wanted, we learned that Fazbear Entertainment dropped off a bunch of scraps and circuit boards to scan into the game to speed up development.
Where'd they get those
They sent
from?
us that stuff in the first place with no explanation. Told us to scan it. It was just junk. Circuit boards and things like that.
I believe that one of the things they scanned into that game was that chip. If you haven't noticed yet, the chip also has 2 lights on it that shine one specific color, green. The same color that Glitch Trap is in Help Wanted, and that is closely related to Charlie. So they scan the Charlie virus into the VR game, and she shows up as a rabbit? At this point, I felt like I was onto something, but I immediately hit a wall. Why would the Charlie virus take the form of a rabbit that tilts its head and waves? Yes, the rabbit is green, which would make sense, but why a rabbit? Well, if the Mimic really is our baby/Charlie bot parallel, what does the Mimic virus present itself as in the books? A white tiger. The same white tiger that it used to carry around in plushie form. But did Charlie...
Wait, what? Why? So why is he a rabbit then? so what's it? A white tiger, which is not a rabbit. So follow me on this. I'm still waiting for the rabbit.
I think it's about to come up.
Yeah, I'm excited. Because I'm like, that's not the same animal.
ever carry around a plushie? Not in the games, but she did in the books. Its name was Theodore, and it was a rabbit that could, quote, wave his hand, tilt his head, and play a recording of Henry saying, I love you, Charlie. Once again, Charlie carried around a rabbit that could tilt its head and wave, which is exactly what we see Glitch Trap doing in Help Wanted.
Okay, so if Charlie's that, but then in the books, the kid carries around his white tiger, and that's his plushie, and then the plushie ends up being the AI, like a Tiger Rock. Here's the thing. Okay.
Something a ton of people in the
Here, real quick before
which is exactly what we see Glitch Trap doing in Help Wanted.
But yeah, the turn your head and wave, that feels stretchy to me. And again, maybe this is just one of those, and the green, I see it. I see why you're saying, oh, it's green and it's glowing green and this and that. Green is also the color of Elizabeth in general. Like, I know that we're like, oh, green could, because to be fair, like in our recent theories, we've also said that green is the color of Charlie in a lot of cases because of the bracelet, yes. So I totally see that. I don't want to be hypocritical at all. But green is also Elizabeth, so like you're already dealing with kind of that trick. Glitch Trap being green, I mean, not 100% sure what to say about that, but I will say that the big thing to me, and I think the big complicating factor there is, you're right, she might be carrying around a rabbit or whatever, but the fact that it is in Afton's original suit, that's the big pushback that I would have. Like, if I'm prioritizing layers of evidence here, for Glitch Trap to appear in the form of a hand-sewn golden rabbit suit, why would it be that way? Like, sure, if it was a large-sized version of the bunny, you know, like make it look like a stuffed animal or potentially something like that. But this is very clearly, like Glitch Trap as he walks around in his vest and all this stuff is very, very, very clearly like an early version, if not the first version of William Afton's bunny outfit that he wore, that he hand sewn. And that's a big thing. Like you look at, you see the stitching on him. So I feel like if I'm ordering and prioritizing my evidence, that would take precedent over just the general color of him and the general vibe of like because when I see green, right? Yes, you're right. It could be a parallel to Charlie. It could be a parallel to Elizabeth. It could also just be like computer code is just green, like the Matrix established. And you know, yeah, you're pulling from a specific source, but the Matrix was such a cultural touchstone that it established, like when you're thinking code and digitized things, they turn green. They turn this like neon green and get digitized into the Matrix or whatever. So in a lot of ways, when you think of like what is the stereotype of code or digital entities, green is kind of that color. So that would be the cross, as opposed to something that's very specific and seems very intentional, which is like, oh, green bunny, purple eyes. Or sorry, hand-stitched bunny costume, purple eyes. That feels really on point and really specific for me.
Something a ton of people in the community have pointed out about Glitchtrap is that he literally has tears streaming down his face and spit on his lip.
That is strange.
Disgusting.
Right? That's just unsanitary, man. That's gross. Really?
This connects directly to what happened in The Mimic, with Edwin crying and spitting on the Mimic as he beat it up after his son's death. So do I think that this...
Yeah, that's an interesting parallel. I don't think it's one and the same. Like, yes, I've used weaker evidence than that before, but I also see, like, to say, oh, he cries and spits, but then also here's this rabbit costume with tears and spit. Wouldn't that seem to imply that then the bunny would be Edwin?
This is the exact bunny that Charlie carried around in the game's timeline? I don't think so. But I will say that I don't think it's a coincidence that at the end of Help Wanted, what Glitchtrap turns into is a little green rabbit plushie. And I also don't think it's a coincidence that in order to hear the secret audio of Vanessa talking to Glitchtrap, you need to be wearing the Vanny mask and holding that plushie in your hand. Just like how the Mimic likes wearing costumes and holding the white tiger plush. But I still think...
I don't hate it. I don't think you need that for the theory. I think, you know, that's a bit of a stretch, but I like how he's selling the narrative.
Some form of Afton is in play here, since we hear Glitchtrap say, "I always come back, let me out" in Princess Quest.
Right.
And I actually stand by what I've been saying in my past theories. I still believe that the Mimic virus was scanned into that game and got the spark notes of Afton's greatest hits through the minigames. The Mimic virus then did what it does best and started mimicking him. But with the information we know now, I think that Mimic virus was also a Charlie virus that came from Baby, represented by the color green we see on that chip. So Glitchtrap is essentially evil Charlie and Afton merged together, which is why we see a green bunny that tilts its head and waves, but it's more in the style of Afton with purple eyes and a purple.
So I agree with this. Maybe not with Help Wanted, but I agree with what he's saying here. And this is the theory that we're working on, which is funny. The idea of the data being messy. And the idea that at a certain point, this program that exists or whatever has learned from multiple sources, which is why it's very messy at this point. So, again, not to spoil our own theory, but it'll be coming out in a week or two. But basically this idea of if everything is AI, right? And it seems like the new generation of games is all about Scott Cawthon, like teaching about AI. The AI is learning from a lot of different sources. It's learning from scanned-in circuit boards that were being put into the system, which are like Afton-based. But it also seems to be learning from other sources. And that's why you have, that's why in the books, right, the Tiger Rock, this embodiment or like the symbol of this AI is always depicted as having two colored eyes. There is at least, there are multiple entities inside this thing as represented by its multicolored eyes. You also see instances where Tiger Rock, in Tiger Rock, Tiger Rock is the animatronic that represents all of this, right? He's basically the embodiment of the AI. He shows elements of ripping off arms and legs, just like they have happen in the epilogues, which is this evil mimic entity. So he's learned or at least connected the programming of that. We also know that he's learned and is able to speak the same computer language as the one that Henry programmed in about his son. So we know that it's related to Mimic 1 at least. He even Edwin even calls out like, oh, it's Mimic 1 program. Oh my gosh. So you know that there are parallels to the original like Charlie stand-in from Edwin's story. You know that there's a connection that Tiger Rock has to this animatronic that's roaming around in the basement that has been programmed to rip off arms and legs, so he's there too. And so you're getting the mimic Tiger Rock in the books as this weird conglomeration of a lot of different sources all being fed into one entity, which shows, again, this idea that it's messy data. It is good data from like the small boy. It is bad data from, this evil murderous thing in the basement. It is messy data from all these things. And I think in Security Breach, again, same thing. You have data from the puppet being put in, and Charlie is mixed in there somehow. You have data from Afton being scanned in from these circuit boards and stuff. You have a lot of data all being put into the same AI program, and it's manifesting in a lot of different ways. And I don't know if each of those is its own mimic. The one in the basement is one trained on more of Afton's data, and the one that's in the circuits and the puppet wires or whatever, those are ones trained more on Charlie's data or whatever. Or if it's manifesting in different ways. I also think that's what the Blob is in a lot of ways, right? Like the Blob, big twist reveal there is I think it's the conglomeration of all that stuff, which is physically represented by it having all the different masks and all the different things. Like that is the physical representation of like, that's how you show that it's a conglomeration of all this data. But I think also if you look at the way it behaves, the way it moves, its parallels to the books, it is that as well. So it is a theory that I will be able to better articulate once I've scripted it out, because it's a complicated idea and there's a lot of moving parts to it. But it does seem like the overarching tent pole or the overarching umbrella of everything that's happening, it seems like John agrees, is it's all about AI, and now it's just the question of like who is it representing in what moments, and how many of these things are out there, or are they all the same thing operating in slightly different ways.
Vest. So if Afton is purple and the Charlie virus is green, it's easy to see what dominoes start to fall. Glitch Trap is purple and green. The door we unlock at the end of Princess Quest has purple and green on it. The logos on Security Breach TV are purple and green. And the rabbit at the end of the Ruin trailer is purple and green with tears streaming from its eyes, just like Glitch Trap. In Help Wanted, Tape Girl warns you not to collect all of the tapes because that'll spawn Glitch Trap. But in the final tape, she changes her tune, telling us that collecting all of the tapes is what we need to do to destroy Glitch Trap.
There is a way to kill it. You have to let it begin the process of leaving through you.
But this isn't Tape Girl talking. It's the Charlie/Mimic virus. Mimicking
/
her
It's
voice.
all of these things.
Mimicking voices.
I know. And again, like that's the thing. I don't envy people who are casual fans of this series. Because I don't envy us either, because as hardcore fans of this series, I don't envy anyone. It is hard to keep track of it all, and it's hard to parse at this point, because even if you know what you're talking about, like at this point I feel like I know what I'm talking about. I've caught up on the books. I feel like I've been reinvested in the franchise, and I'm restudying it all for the movies and the new game and this and that, so I've been able to like come back up to speed on everything. And so I feel like, because between games and between theories and stuff, like unless we're actively, like stuff slowly drifts away, right? And you lose track of some of the details, and I feel like I've come back online. I'm like, okay, I remember all this stuff. But man, it is hard even if you know everything. And so to come in as a casual fan who maybe hasn't been following every book and every theory video up between now and then, since Security Breach, and this new game drops, and you're like, what? Like, excuse me, what? What is going on here? Who's this tiger now? Why is there a tiger? Like, I don't know if Tiger Rock is, he won't. I don't think, because he is a specific creation for the books to represent the concept of AI. But it's one of those things where, like, I don't know. You're being dropped into the deep end of the pool, my friends.
Is something we see Baby do to Michael in Sister Location.
We need you so that we can leave.
We need you so that we can leave.
This is also something we hear the Mimic do in the epilogues of the Tales books. Quote from the epilogues. Help! The voice on the radio came through loud and clear. Help me! I'm trapped in the old pizzeria, the voice said. Kelly looked up at Lucia. It's the Mimic.
Yeah.
So it looks like this Charlie/Mimic virus is now running throughout the entire Pizzaplex. Like I said before, Steelbowl was hinting at...
That's again why we think Gregory is definitely a Mimic. Or at least has maybe he has even been absorbed, or his behavior data has been observed by this program, this AI, whatever. And in Ruin, you're going to see this character behave as all these different things, right? That's why it's able to speak in Gregory's voice in the trailer, is because it observed it. It's maybe it has nothing to do with Gregory as we knew him in Security Breach. Maybe this program, from watching Gregory around the pizzeria, has observed him, absorbed his data, and knows it, and now can represent him and speak as him and whatever.
This through the environmental
It
storytelling.
would be weird to
and
bring
there's
Gregory
one
back.
part of the Pizzaplex filled with environmental storytelling that hasn't made sense until now. The Endo daycare. Why would the Endos need a daycare? Well, it's because they're literally being run by a virus that was meant to mimic a child.
training
And
grounds.
like I said back in November, you can find the Nightmarion plushie in this daycare in front of a deactivated endoskeleton. This endo only activates once you grab that plush. Like I said back in November, this to me indicates that a darker version of the puppet has been activated. So now the big question is, what does this virus want? Well, just like it says in Princess Quest, it wants out. It wants to enter the physical world. But Glitchtrap needs someone it can control to be able to do that. That's where Vanessa comes in. But Vanessa can't do this alone. So she puts the virus into the BB World arcade machine.
Now we're getting in the card. Okay. We're getting to a lot. I think we should have lingered more on the daycare, because I think the daycare is an interesting thing that all of us should probably talk about more, and we should probably talk about more in a game theory at some point. Because, yeah, we kind of skimmed through that. Again, it's one of those things that we all rushed through the game, and there were very clear moments where it's like, oh, this is clearly a lore moment. This is very clearly a lore. Like the post-it room. It's like, that's very clearly a lore thing. But in the process, you were grappling with glitchy mechanics and this and that. And so those storytelling moments of, yeah, there's a basement where there's a bunch of, like, why is there a daycare for the endoskeletons down in the basement? It's like, that's weird. And you never stop to think about it because you're just moving on to the next thing. Or, like, there's a whole, like, where you upgrade Freddy. Like, that upgrade area has a bunch of endoskeletons just hanging around in cages and in, like, training rooms and stuff. And it's like, why? Well, maybe it is. Like, and again, this goes to what we were saying earlier about, like, feeding it data. Maybe each of those endoskeletons is being fed a different subset of data. Hey, you're being fed the Afton data. Hey, you're being fed the, all data, and they're trying to find the right mix to find the right behavior or whatever, because that's how AI language learning models work, right? They're being trained off of existing data, and it's just what you put into it. So maybe that's the reason why there's a daycare center or whatever, is because we're seeing how they all behave once they've been infused with whatever data sets they're infusing.
That none other than Gregory ends up playing. After Gregory also gets possessed by Glitchtrap, she moves the BB World machine into the secret daycare room. But Vanessa still has work to do. You can actually see her plan through Vanny's spray paint in the Endo daycare. She needs an endoskeleton to put him into.
Yeah. I think that's fair. This has always bothered me, and I haven't gone back and rethought about it with my new understanding of, well, it's AI, and we're training. Again, the idea of, like, oh, we're training AI has shifted, again, how I look at this stuff, but it's very clearly what Tales of the Pizzaplex is trying to tell us, is that all of this is somehow based in this Mimic program, which is, again, like, it's easy to lose track of when you're talking Mimic 1, Mimic 2, who is Mimic 1, who's Mimic 2, is Burn Trap a Mimic, whatever. I think that's thinking about it at a level of granularity that you can get to, but I don't know if we're ready for it yet. I think you have to broaden it out. Think about it as an AI language learning model, and all these different tranches of, like, we're feeding it data. We're feeding it data. What data are we feeding it? Where are we putting it? This now makes sense to me. Vanny training some AI or whatever to become Afton, and they're feeding it Afton data to become this. I think that's what, because why would there be two bunnies? This has always confused me. Why are there two bunnies? Why are there two bunnies? That doesn't make sense. Now it does. Vanessa training someone, a robot, to become the new Afton, and that is who you see at the end of the game, which is Burn Trap, but is really an empty endoskeleton in the suit of Afton, trained on his data, which is stupid. Again, how would you know this? You would have no idea. This would make no sense. And again, you go back and you look at Security Breach and everyone's confusion over it and everyone's dismissal of it in a lot of cases. And it's like, I get it, because none of this is clearly communicated. And again, remember, you're also dealing with Patient 46 and these mysterious tapes there, and you're also dealing with codes on the wall. And why is this sister location room, Mike's room, sister location, like in the Pizzaplex of all places? And then FNAF 6, and there's a blob, and there were so many things. And again, the idea of Freddy spaghetti that I keep throwing out, that gets thrown against the wall and seeing what sticks, it's all, and the weird thing is, it's like all of those things. But how they all work together is something that I think only now you can really start to parse through or figure out, because the books have, in a lot of ways, been holding our hand through that process. And I think it's no failing of ours. I think, you know, the idea of AI and language learning and this and that, like, is such a foreign concept and such a foreign layer to add to this franchise. But now that the books have made it clear that that is a big part of it, it's like, oh, now I see how it layers in. Now I see where those puzzle pieces were. Now we can start doing it. But yeah, if you just take what we knew at Security Breach going into it, yes, there was a lot of environmental storytelling that we missed, but there was also like a key linchpin or two in there that needed to be communicated that we would have never been able to figure out on our own.
And who better than the animatronic animal he's trying to mimic? Vanessa uses Bonnie's endo and puts the Afton virus inside of it, successfully getting Glitchtrap out of the game and into the physical world.
Instead of viruses and stuff, I think it's like trains it on Afton data. I think that's the way to put it.
This is now what we know as Burn Trap.
Yes.
But like I said before,
But
this
he's got
virus...
like humanoid stuff, like, and again, like this
physical
gets into
world.
that territory
This is
of
now
like,
what we know as Burn Trap.
like, look, he's got like humanoid teeth. He's got teeth, man. He's got a human face in there, which is frustrating. I don't think he's necessarily wrong. I think that this is actually a very good idea, and it largely aligns with a lot of the ways that we internally have been talking about this series, especially in the wake of the books and where the books have been leading. But then you look at this very screenshot, and you're like, he's got teeth! Then how's the endoskeleton got teeth, man? I get that Burn Trap might not be Afton, and that it's instead this like reborn Afton in the form of like a robot body trained on his data, and he's just mimicking it. Fine, I'm okay with that. But then don't give him teeth in his model. Make him an actual animatronic. Like, he's got little like body wires.
Yeah, like tendons.
He's got tendons and veins and stuff.
It's got to be the body that he was
Right.
in. But the mind doesn't have to be, I guess.
I
Is that
I
what
guess,
they're
but
trying to...
Right, and that's the problem though, right? Is like, is he a robot who's being trained to be Afton? Great. I don't love it. I don't love it, but I get it, and I can see that, and that is a... Is it where I would take the story? No. But is it a valid decision to make? Absolutely, 100%. But if that's the case, make him a robot that then he is. But here, where the design of him has all of the trappings of old Afton, and his teeth are still here, and his veins and tendons may still be here, and he looks very similar to the Aftons that came. You can't have your cake and eat it too.
That's exactly what I was going to say. That's what they're trying to do.
This is one of those times, we created two different pathways. It could be Afton Reborn, or if the audience is really mad about that, it's an AI language learning model this entire time, and it's not really Afton, it's a copy of Afton. And we'll decide how. It's the Sonic trailer. It's like, well, fans really didn't like the Afton's Reborn bit, so let's go this way.
Yep.
Maybe they are all robots. Maybe they're all AI. It is. It's having your cake and eating it too. And in this case, this isn't Across the Spider-Verse where you just buy two cakes, right? You can't. You should have bought two cakes. No cakes were had. Too much of one, too much of the other. Yeah, that's the problem.
Yep.
But like I said before, this virus is not just Afton, it's Charlie too.
Right.
And she wants the same thing. And who better a candidate than the thing that she was built to mimic? A little brunette girl with pigtails. I think it's obvious that Ruin takes place way after Security Breach. And the likelihood that Gregory is still alive and trapped under the Pizzaplex after all that time is very low. That's why I think Ruin is a trap.
I'm trapped.
Yes.
Here
yes,
at the
I 100%
Pizzaplex.
agree.
What's
I don't
left
think
of it?
anyone. I don't think anyone actually doubts that. I think that's not even a theory. That's like, that is a fact that the community has. It will be shocking if it's not a trap. I feel like, to everyone.
Charlie/Mimic virus is pretending to be Gregory,
Yes.
so that it can lure Cassie and use her body to enter the real world.
I don't know
Do
about
your
that,
own
but I agree
research,
that
come to your
it's-
own conclusions. But in my opinion, I think Baby was once a robotic version of Charlie Emily, containing a program meant to mimic her. The bot was then beaten up by Henry after the death of his real daughter at the hands of William Afton. Grafton. After Baby was left behind by Henry, she was stolen by William and
baby
claimed
isn't
as his
mine.
own. This same animatronic went on to kill William's daughter, Elizabeth. After this happened, Baby was now a Charlie robot possessed by Elizabeth. Baby was then once again abandoned in the sister location bunker, until Michael came along at the request of his father to save her and put her back together. Unbeknownst
obviously.
to Henry, the Charlie virus was able to escape Baby by tricking Michael into taking the chip containing it out of the robot.
I want you to save what is good, so the rest can be destroyed and never recovered.
Henry then thinks he burned everything in FNAF 6, but the Mimic/Charlie virus he created lived on when it was scanned into Fazbear Entertainment's new VR game. A lot of this theory connects to what we see in the Silver Eyes trilogy, and I think it's important to say that so much of what we know today
Obviously. How did you plebs not know that the entire time?
Duh.
Duh. Come on. It's clear as day. We knew it the entire time. It's a solid theory. I like it. I like a lot of it, actually. I don't have a whole lot of complaints. I mean, outside of just, it's insane, and whoever made those story decisions should apologize and feel very bad about themselves. But that being said, for the person to put it together and be like, yeah, this is evidentiary, I'm like, yeah, I could see that. I think a lot of that makes sense, provided all the things that this franchise has thrown at us, sure. I need to think about it more, and I think a lot of it, regardless, we were already actually making a theory about when it comes to the AI stuff and some of the later security breach things. So, like, I agree, especially with a lot of the later stuff. It's always just like Charlie getting kidnapped and possessing a robot, and then Elizabeth possessing the same robot, and so, like, that's the stuff that I hate. And yes, it's in the books, but it is so complicated, and in the games, there's like nothing really that indicates that, except for, and this starts to put it together, but like it puts a lot of those pieces together. I like it. I need to think through, but this is solid. This is really solid. Let's finish it off.
All of these things were first introduced in those books and then put into the games
we're
by
defending
Scott.
the books, yeah.
I don't think the games are telling the exact same story, though. I think the books are a separate continuity, like Scott said a while ago. But I think he's definitely taking ideas from them. But the only people who know all of the answers are Scott and Steelwool Studios. And until they feel like sharing those answers, I hope you enjoyed me sharing my ideas for the story they're trying to tell.
It was great. Great. Clap and a half. It was great. I thought this was really solid. Like I said, I think a lot of John's theories are just really, really solid. I think this is absolutely a solid one. I think it aligns with a lot of the stuff that I've been seeing in the books, a lot of the things that I've been kind of thinking about as we've seen more of the Tales of the Pizzaplex come out, and as the epilogues have started to like push more and more into like, let's talk about AI, let's talk about this mimic thing, let's talk more. And I don't like it, and I could see why a theory like this would be so controversial and why people would get mad about it. But again, don't hate the theorist, hate the game. Like, honestly, honestly, that's kind of got to be what it is, right? It's like we're just trying to put together the clues that have been out there, and like I said repeatedly throughout this, it seems like a lot of times those clues can go in multiple directions, and I think intentionally so, to leave storytelling options open for when you want to pivot or go in a different direction. So that's solid. I like this. This is really good. I need to think about, and I've suspected for a while that there's some kid who's not exactly what they seem and was stolen at birth or whatever. It feels like such a repeated theme of the series. It's there, but interesting. Good job, John. Good job, John from FNAF. Very, very proud. That's
John
a
from
really
the channel
solid theory.
FNAF.
I also see the scripting getting better. Solid across the board. Really, really good. So thank you for bringing that to our attention. Thank you for all the hard work that got into that. And thank you for giving me the chance to react to it. So I go back to working on my theory, and who knows when Ruin releases. We'll see if mine actually is able to get out before the actual release of the game, but we'll find out together. I expect it to drop in a week or two. I'll be in London, so I'm going to probably be broadcasting that one from Tom's house. Funny enough, driving out to his place in the fields of the UK. Hopefully we'll find a good cozy spot to place through some Ruin. But that should be coming out pretty soon, which I'm excited about. But until then, it's all just theories, game theories. And this wasn't a live stream. This was a video for you. See ya!